Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be going deep on TotalEnergies.
Okay.
This is a really fascinating company. They're obviously a major player in the global energy market.
hmm
But, what's interesting to me is how they're expanding beyond just like the traditional oil and gas.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to be dissecting their business model today. We're going to, try to figure out where their money comes from,
Okay.
what their big expenses are,
Right.
what sets them apart from the rest of, the crowded energy market.
It's an interesting time to be an energy company, that's for sure. And Total Energies is really right in the thick of things.
Yeah, yeah. So let's start with like the foundation of any business, right?
Yeah.
Revenue.
Sure.
Um, we know oil and gas are still huge for them,
hmm
but like, how huge are we talking?
So if we look at their 2023 20F report, their exploration and production segment, which is their oil and gas,
Right.
brought in a cash flow of $18,531 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, but it's actually down 33% from the previous year. Oh, wow.
Which just shows you how much the price of oil and gas can really swing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big drop.
Yeah,
I mean, it really underscored how volatile that market is.
absolutely.
So how are they trying to stabilize their revenue streams? We know
Wow.
they're not just sitting on their oil rigs.
Well, yeah, their integrated LNG segment is a major growth area for them.
Yeah.
They produced 449 K a load in 2023.
What is Cape?
1,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day.
Okay. Okay.
So that's a significant amount of natural gas production, and that's where they're putting a lot of their eggs right now.
So natural gas being that, quote unquote bridge fuel that we hear so much about.
Exactly.
But they're also doing some interesting stuff like moving away from certain oil and gas assets, right?
Mm.
Their 2023 20DOF report mentioned they're selling off oil sands projects in Canada.
Right.
Like, why walk away from assets like that?
Well, that's where the idea of stranded assets comes in.
Um, Oil sands projects require a lot of investment.
Right.
They're very carbon intensive.
Yeah.
And as the world transitions away from fossil fuels, those assets could really become unprofitable.
Yeah. So they're kind of like getting rid of things that might become liabilities down the line.
Exactly. Very strategic.
Yeah. Like they're adapting.
hmm
But let's talk about the cost of running a global energy, John. Like, what are some of their key, expenses?
Well, just producing a barrel of oil is actually more expensive than a lot of people realize.
Okay.
Exploration, drilling, extraction, transportation, refining,
Yeah.
all of that adds up.
Yeah.
But TotalEnergies has one of the lowest production costs in the industry, around $5.05 per barrel.
Why?
That's from their 2022 20F.
Okay.
So that gives them a big advantage, especially when oil prices are down.
Yeah. So low production costs is definitely a win.
Yeah.
But what about the expenses, like beyond just getting that oil out of the ground?
Yep.
What else is kind of eating into their profits?
Well, depreciation is a big factor. Oil rigs and refineries, pipelines, those things don't last forever.
Right.
And so their 2022 20F shows some pretty significant depreciation costs,
Okay.
especially for their exploration and production equipment.
So it's like a constant maintenance bill.
It is, yeah, on a massive scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's their investment in renewables,
Right.
which I imagine is another big expense.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not cheap to go green.
No, it's not. And then we can't forget about the environmental regulations and potential, carbon taxes and all that.
All of that. Yeah, compliance costs.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've looked at where their money's coming from,
Mhm.
and we've looked at what they're spending it on.
Right.
But what does this all mean for their customers?
Yeah.
Like what's the value that Total Energy is offering?
Well, they're trying to do a bit of a balancing act. They want to provide reliable and affordable energy to meet the world's current needs,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, they're trying to transition towards these cleaner solutions.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing to manage.
It's a tough line to walk. with
Makes
that.
sense.
So it's that whole multi-energy approach that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
There's not just ditching oil and gas entirely,
Right.
but they're also investing in renewables. Are they trying to attract like a different kind of customer?
I think they are.
Okay.
Someone who's maybe a bit more environmentally conscious.
Right, right.
And their 2024 20F actually highlights a lot of these initiatives.
Right.
They're aiming to reduce their sales of petroleum products by 40% by 2030.
That's 8%.
40%, which is a big commitment.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And so what are they doing to attract these, environmentally conscious consumers?
Well, one thing is they're investing heavily in electric vehicle charging stations across Europe.
Makes sense.
They're also partnering with companies like Global Infrastructure Partners
Hmm.
and Clearway Energy Group to develop these large-scale renewable energy projects.
Okay, so they're kind of offering a more sustainable package.
Yeah, trying to broaden their appeal.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, so they're definitely trying to, appeal to a wider range of consumers.
Hmm.
But what makes Total Energies different from all the other, energy giants out there?
Right.
What's their unique thing?
Well, I think it's this balanced approach that they have.
Okay.
They're not abandoning oil and gas completely,
Right.
but they are really going after that low carbon future.
Yeah, they're hedging their bets, I guess you could say.
In a way, yeah.
And we can't forget their low production costs,
Absolutely.
for oil and gas, which gives them a big advantage.
Yeah, especially in a market where price is such a big factor for people.
Exactly. Exactly. And their geographic focus, I think, is interesting too.
Oh yeah.
They have a really strong presence in Europe,
Uh-huh.
which is, interesting given the EU's climate goals.
Right. Very ambitious goals.
Yeah, yeah, and they're also building partnerships in the Asia Pacific region, right?
Yeah, tapping into those emerging markets for renewable energy.
So they're really strategically positioned, to kind of adapt to different regional needs.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well let's kind of shift gears a little bit and zoom in on like the day-to-day operations
Okay.
that make this whole, global energy giant work.
Right.
So I mean, exploration and production are still at the core of what they do.
They are, yeah. That's where their expertise lies.
Right, right. They've got to find and extract those oil and gas resources.
Hmm.
Then there's refining and processing, turning that crude oil into something that people can actually use.
Exactly. Yeah, and managing, LNG production.
That's got to be pretty complicated, I imagine.
It is very complex.
Yeah. And the logistics must be, mind-boggling. Moving energy around the world.
It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah, yeah. So what does that look like?
Well, they've got a global network of pipelines,
Okay.
tankers,
Right.
and all sorts of other infrastructure to move that energy around.
Wow.
And then there's the marketing and sales side,
Right.
reaching customers, through service stations, corporate partnerships, all that.
So it's like this giant interconnected web,
It is.
just working to keep that energy flowing.
Keeps the world running.
Yeah, yeah. And research and development is a big part of this too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. They need to constantly innovate,
Mm-hmm.
improve efficiency, reduce emissions,
Right.
come up with new solutions.
So it's not just about maintaining the status quo.
No,
It's about looking to the future.
it's all about the future.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fascinating company to follow, and they're constantly adapting
They are.
and evolving.
It's a very dynamic industry.
Yeah, well, we've covered a lot of ground. We've looked at their revenue streams,
Mm.
their costs, their efforts to kind of differentiate themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and those crucial operations that keep this global giant running.
It's a big operation.
But we're just getting started. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into the challenges that Total Energies faces
Okay.
as it navigates this complex energy landscape.
Oh,
So
yeah.
stick with us.
Sounds good.
All right. So we've been kind of exploring Total Energy's business model,
Yeah.
their revenue streams and their costs and how they're, trying to position themselves in the market.
Mm-hmm.
But let's like get real for a second.
Okay.
Like what are some of the biggest hurdles they're facing
Right.
as they try to, navigate this whole energy transition?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is the energy transition itself.
Okay.
The world is moving towards a low carbon future,
Right.
and that means eventually, less demand for fossil fuels.
So it's almost like they're racing against the clock
In a way, yeah.
to kind of adapt before their core business, becomes obsolete.
Yeah, they have to evolve.
Yeah. Yeah. How are they handling that pressure?
Well, they're trying to balance the old with the new, which is, it's not easy.
Right.
Managing those existing oil and gas assets while also investing in renewables
Yeah.
and other low carbon solutions. It's a real balancing act.
It's like walking a tightrope. Like
It is.
they've got to keep their investors happy. They've got to meet the demands of their customers.
Right.
And then, there's the whole planet to think about.
Of course. Yeah.
Are they getting any pushback from any of those, stakeholders?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of pressure from shareholders these days to prioritize sustainability.
Okay.
Investors are looking for companies that are aligned with a low carbon future. So TotalEnergies has to really show that they're serious about this transition,
Gotcha.
if they want to attract those investors.
Yeah, it's not just about doing the right thing, it's also about like staying financially viable.
It is, yeah. It's a business.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not just investors they got to worry about, right?
Right. No.
What about government regulations?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, government regulations and policies have a huge impact on the energy industry.
Mm.
We see that especially in Europe,
Okay.
where TotalEnergies has a big presence.
Right.
The EU has these very ambitious climate goals,
Yeah.
and that's really pushing companies like TotalEnergies to reduce their emissions and invest in clean energy.
So they need to be like politically savvy,
Yeah.
working with governments to kind of shape a future that works for them and the environment.
It's all about collaboration.
Yeah, and then there's the whole issue of social responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
The TotalEnergies operates in some pretty sensitive areas around the world.
They do.
And they need to be, mindful of their impact on local communities.
Right. It's not just about profits.
Right.
It's also about people.
Yeah.
Of the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like they're facing this whole, constellation of challenges.
It's a complex landscape.
Yeah, the energy transition itself, pressure from investors, political, complexity,
Mm-hmm.
social responsibility. Like, how are they responding to all of this?
Sure.
Are they actually putting their money where their mouth is?
Well, they are investing heavily in renewables and other low carbon technologies.
Okay.
They want to become a major player in solar, wind, even hydrogen.
Okay.
And they're not just building new projects; they're also, acquiring companies in the renewable energy space,
Right.
like their deal with Clearway Energy Group in the U.S.
Okay. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it shows they're serious.
But it's one thing to announce these initiatives.
Right.
It's another to actually implement them.
Absolutely.
How are they measuring their progress?
Well, they've set some pretty ambitious targets
Okay.
for reducing their emissions and the carbon intensity of their products.
Right.
For example, they're aiming to reduce the life cycle carbon intensity of the energy products they sell by 25% by 2030.
25%. That's pretty significant.
It is, yeah, and they're planning to really increase the share of renewables in their energy mix as well.
Okay.
And they're, reporting on this pretty transparently through their sustainability reports and engaging with stakeholders.
Transparency is key.
It is.
But even with all these efforts, I imagine there's still some skepticism.
Oh, of course.
What are some of the criticisms of their approach?
Well, some environmental groups argue that they're just not moving fast enough.
Okay.
That they're still too invested in fossil fuels.
Right.
And some investors are, they're worried about the financial risks associated with the energy transition.
Right.
Investing in renewables can be expensive.
Yeah.
And the returns might not be as immediate.
Right, as with the traditional energy projects.
Exactly.
So they're trying to balance these, demands from different groups.
Mm-hmm.
Some pushing for faster change.
Sure.
Others are, concerned about the bottom line.
It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act.
For sure.
And then, there are the geopolitical challenges.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen how events like the conflict in Ukraine
Mm-hmm.
can just disrupt energy markets
Absolutely.
and create all this uncertainty.
Yeah, it throws everything up in the air.
Yeah, it's a reminder that energy is just deeply intertwined with global politics.
It is.
And TotalEnergies needs to be prepared for whatever might, come next.
Always be prepared.
Yeah, and we can't forget about the, the social and ethical considerations.
Right.
TotalEnergies is operating in these complex environments. And they really need to be mindful of their, impact on local communities
Mm-hmm.
and human rights.
It's about responsible energy production, not
Yes.
just, any production at any cost.
Right. It sounds like TotalEnergies is facing this really complex web of challenges and opportunities
Right.
as it navigates this energy transition. It's a really dynamic situation.
It is, yeah,
And the stakes are high.
very high.
But before we move on, I want to kind of get your take on something.
Sure.
You've been painting this picture of TotalEnergies as a company that's trying to kind of straddle two worlds, the old world of oil and gas,
Right.
and this new world of renewable energy.
Yeah.
But are they really committed to this to this transition?
That's a great question, and it's one that a lot of people are asking.
Yeah.
I think their actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
They're making significant investments.
Mm-hmm.
They're setting ambitious targets, and they're being transparent about their progress.
Okay.
But there's no doubt that they still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
The energy transition is a marathon, not a sprint.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Exactly.
So they're moving in the right direction,
I think so.
but they're not quite there yet.
Not yet.
What are some of the things that we should be watching for, to kind of gauge their progress in the coming years?
Well, I would say keep an eye on their investments in renewable energy projects.
Okay.
Their progress in reducing their own emissions,
Mm-hmm.
and how they're engaging with policymakers and stakeholders on climate change.
Gotcha.
Those are all, key indicators.
Yeah. It's a fascinating story unfolding in real time.
Yeah, we're all watching it happen.
We'll have to keep an eye on them, but we're not done yet.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll explore some of the factors that could make or break TotalEnergies' success in this rapidly changing energy landscape.
Seems good.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
So we've been, really analyzing TotalEnergies' business model,
Yeah.
their strategic moves, and the challenges they're facing in this whole energy, transition.
Mm.
It's clear they're making some pretty bold bets on a low carbon future.
Yeah.
But like you were saying before, their success isn't entirely in their own hands.
Right. There are a lot of factors at play.
Yeah. So what are some of those external factors
Yeah.
that could really make or break their strategy?
Well, one big one is the pace of technological innovation.
Okay.
If we see big breakthroughs in areas like solar energy,
Mm-hmm.
battery storage, carbon capture,
Right.
that could really reshape the energy landscape and speed up the transition away from fossil fuels.
So faster innovation could actually be like a double-edged sword for them.
It could.
It'd be great for their renewable energy investments. But it could also, hurt their traditional oil and gas business.
Absolutely. They need to be adaptable
Yeah.
and ready to pivot as new technologies emerge.
And then there's, the whole unpredictable world of geopolitics.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, energy security is a huge deal for every country.
It is, yeah.
And global events can have these huge ripple effects
They can.
on energy markets. I mean, we saw that with the conflict in Ukraine.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
who knows what's next.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, it's a reminder that energy is just so deeply intertwined with global politics.
It is, yeah.
And TotalEnergies needs to be prepared for anything.
Be ready for anything.
Yeah, and consumer behavior is a big factor too.
Yeah, right, absolutely. I mean, as awareness of climate change grows,
Yeah.
will people start making different choices
Yeah.
about how they use energy?
Right.
Will we all be driving electric vehicles? Will people start flying as much? These are all trends that could really impact TotalEnergies' strategy.
So it's not just about what they're offering. It's about what consumers want.
It is, yeah. If the market really shifts towards cleaner energy, they need to be ready.
And then there's government policies and regulations,
It's
right?
a huge factor.
Like, will governments around the world actually implement strong policies, to support the energy transition?
Like carbon pricing, renewable energy mandates, stricter emission standards.
Yeah.
Those decisions, will have huge ripple effects across the entire energy sector.
It seems like they're facing a lot of uncertainty,
They are.
a lot of variables they can't really control.
That's the nature of the business.
Yeah. So what's the biggest factor?
I think ultimately it might be the collective will to act on climate change.
Okay.
Solving this problem really requires a global effort. Governments, businesses, individuals, we all have to, make changes.
Right.
TotalEnergies is a big player, but they can't do it alone.
So what does all this mean for TotalEnergies? Like, what's their outlook?
Well, the future is always uncertain.
Yeah.
But I think they're taking the right steps.
Yeah.
They're diversifying. They're investing in innovation. They're engaging with stakeholders.
Okay.
But their long-term success is really going to depend on how well they adapt to all of these external factors.
Yeah. It's a lot to juggle.
It is.
It's been It's been really fascinating to kind of explore this with you.
Yeah, it's a fascinating company.
We've dissected their business model,
We have.
analyzed their strategic moves, and really uncovered the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead.
Yeah, it's a complex situation.
Yeah. Well, deep divers, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Total Energies. We've learned about their revenue streams, their costs, their efforts to, differentiate themselves,
Yeah,
and the really crucial operations that keep this global giant running.
it's a big machine.
But maybe most importantly, we've really grappled with the big questions facing not just Total Energies, but the whole energy sector.
Yeah.
How do we balance energy security with sustainability?
Right.
How do we navigate this transition to a low carbon future while still meeting the world growing energy needs?
These are the questions we all need to be thinking about.
Yeah, it's a big challenge.
It is.
This deep dive has given you a lot to consider,
Hopefully.
and we really encourage you to explore the source material.
Yeah, do your own research.
And do your own research.
Form your own conclusions.
Yeah, the world of energy is full of surprises,
It is.
and there's always more to learn.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Thanks for having me.